Story time about the day my husband attacked me and put me in the hospital. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, instead of me on Instagram. My husband and I had been married for 7 years. 3 years into the marriage, he started sleeping on the couch. We would constantly fight back then because of several things. Number 1, I knew he was cheating on me, but he would never admit to it. Number 2, I wanted to have children, but he didn't want to at the time. Number 3, he never wanted to spend time with me and always prioritized his friends. And this was around the time that he started getting physically violent. Because we'd already been married for a few years at that point, I never saw him as a violent person. It all started by him shoving me one time during an argument. But he shoved me so hard I fell to the ground and ended up bruising my chin. And even though this was a big problem between me and him, it became an even bigger problem between me and my family. As soon as my parents saw the bruise, they started accusing him of beating me. And of course, my first instinct was to defend my husband. My parents begged me to stay with them and I didn't. I went back to my husband and demanded an apology, but he wouldn't even look me in the face. He told me he basically did not care. Once he started sleeping on the couch, it was just like we were roommates. We stayed like this for years. Anytime we got into an argument, he would just look for something to throw at me. One day he threw a jewelry box at me and I ended up in the ER. And of course the hospital thought it was my husband. So I lied and said that I tripped. And unfortunately, I went straight back to my husband. Part 2 is story time about the day my husband attacked me and put me in the hospital. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, instead of me on Instagram. After years of him pushing me, shoving me, throwing things at me, and even slapping me, I became so numb to it. It would get me really angry and upset at the moment, but as soon as he would apologize, we would just go back to normal. But even our normal wasn't normal. We didn't sleep in the same bed. He was never really home, and when he was always playing video games. This was also around the time that he lost his job. So for 5 years, I was basically the breadwinner. He told me he didn't want to get a job and he wanted to play video games. I didn't tell him anything because I didn't want it to turn into a fight. But I was angry at the thought that I had to now support him. But like I said, my parents did not like him at all. They knew something was up because I always had some sort of bruise. My parents made it a habit of showing up unannounced to our house. I was actually really grateful to my parents. This didn't upset me at all. But my husband, on the other hand, hated my parents. One day he asked me, why do they even care about you so much? You're not that important. Around a year ago, I started feeling really sick all the time. At the time, I didn't know why. One day, I walk into the kitchen and see my husband holding eye drops in his hand, but he quickly put it away. I asked him why he was holding that, and he said nothing, mind your own business. So I did. A few months later, I'm having a conversation with a coworker, and he told me a story about somebody using eye drops on someone else to make them sick. This is when it all clicked. I had all these weird stomach issues. And I never realized that it was him putting eye drops in my coffee. This is when I decided to file for divorce. Instead of filing for divorce and leaving him, I went home and told him that I was going to get a divorce. He grabbed a hammer and started chasing me. I locked myself in the bathroom. Part 3 is up. Story time about the day my husband attacked me and put me in the hospital. Disclaimer, is not my story time, instead of me on Instagram. When I saw him grab the hammer, I started instantly running. I ran straight to the bathroom and locked myself. The good thing is that he would never damage this house because he does love it, so he didn't swing at the door. I stayed in the bathroom for an hour explaining to him why I wanted to get a divorce. After the 2 hours, I thought he had calmed down. He basically told me that he would give me the divorce with no problem. But let me remind you, I was the breadwinner and he had no job. He was completely dependent on me. But as soon as I opened the door, he pushed in and started hitting me. Unfortunately, I didn't tell anyone in my family what my plan was. Suddenly, I wake up and I realize I'm on the ground. 4 hours had passed. I get up and look at myself in the mirror, and my face was completely swollen. I walk into the living room and my husband was there playing video games, just like he did every day all day. As soon as he sees me, he says, "You better go wash your face." Instead, I grabbed my things and ran out. He didn't even bother chasing me. I called my parents on the way to the hospital and they met me there. Luckily, there was no major damage. My parents helped me file a police report, and when the police showed up to see my husband, he had cleaned the bathroom. Guess what he told them? That he was the one that wanted to divorce me because I was crazy, and that I had made up the whole attack. He says that I must have hit myself in the face. That's when the cops asked him, "How do you know that she was hit in the face?" Gotcha. He said he had assumed that I was being hit in the face. My brothers and parents went over and kicked him out. I sold the place and bought a house down the street from my parents. I am now so much happier. I feel like I'm aging backwards from not being around him. The constant feel and nervousness I felt around him took a toll on me, and I just hadn't realized it. To this day, he says he did nothing, and the cops have done nothing against him. I need proof, so what should I do? My best friend always projects her insecurities onto me. Should I break up with her? My best friend and I have known each other for exactly 2 years. We met in college and hit it off right away. We're both Latinas and we come from really big families. I have 2 other sisters and we get along really well. We always hype each other up and have each other's backs. A few months after I started my friendship with my best friend, let's call her Lucia. Lucia started showing some really toxic qualities. Sometimes I think I'm just reading too much into it or overreacting. So you let me know. First of all, she would start talking bad about my sisters in front of me. She would make comments like, wow, your sister's gained weight. Or wow, your sister has cellulite. When she first did this, I would just defend my sisters, but then I realized that just made her want to keep talking more trash. So if she ever said anything about my sisters, I wouldn't say anything. At the time our friendship started, I had a really big crush on this guy. He and I went to the same gym and I never had the courage to speak to him, not until my sister convinced me to. I finally spoke to him at the gym and we actually hit it off. We would work out together every now and then and he finally asked me out on a date. The day of our date, my best friend came over to my house, and while I was getting ready, she started saying really weird things. At first, she told me that I should wash my hair because it looked oily. I told her my hair was freshly washed. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I could see her reflection and she just rolled her eyes at me. This is when things started clicking. Part 2 is up. My best friend projects her insecurities on me. Should I break up with her? I could see through the mirror that she had rolled her eyes at me. Then she started making other comments about my appearance. Mind you, I'm getting ready for a date. When I showed her the outfit that I was gonna wear, she said it was too revealing and that I would probably scare him off. It wasn't even revealing, it just showed my legs. It was a cute sundress with the cardigan on top. I told her I thought I looked cute. And then she said, allá tu amiga. As I'm finishing up my hair and my makeup, she says, wow, you're gonna wear that much makeup? But the way she said it was so aggressive, I actually took off the lipstick I was wearing. Instead, I just put on lip balm. I looked at her and she had a smile on her face. It was like she was happy she finally got to me. The date went really well and he actually turned into my boyfriend a few weeks later. And guess what? My best friend started judging everything about him. The first time she met him, she started saying, wow, I think he's balding, which he isn't. And even if he was, I wouldn't care. She also started making comments about him staring at other girls, something I never even noticed that he did, and I would know I'm with him all the time. It's like she was trying to plant all these insecurities in my head. One day, Lucia and my boyfriend and I are in his car. We were heading to the movie theaters when Lucia says, wow, you put on way too much perfume. It's giving me a headache. That's when my boyfriend told her that if it bothered her that much, she should just go home. And out of nowhere, Lucia swung her fist at him. She actually tried to attack him. Part 3 is up. My best friend always projects her insecurities on me. Should I break up with her? That's when she started swinging at my boyfriend. Luckily, I yelled at her and she stopped. It's like she was upset at me for yelling at her for trying to hit my boyfriend. That's when my boyfriend kicked her out of the car and I asked him to calm down. I got out of the car with Lucia and asked her to calm down. That's when she told me that I needed to break up with him and that he was clearly abusive. I told her he was just defending me. Then she said he doesn't need to defend you. I'm only saying this because I care about you. Then she called herself an Uber and left. My boyfriend and I went to the movie theaters and we had a really nice night. Here's some more examples of her projecting on me. While we were getting ready for a friend's birthday party, she started pointing out some stuff on my body. She said, your elbows are really dark. You need to fix that. Another time I decided to get some highlights and she said they looked horrible on me. She said I looked like a JLo wannabe. Luckily, I didn't care and I just kept the highlights. Mind you, 2 months later, she got the exact same highlights. Now, I know that she cares about me because she does have my back. She'll help me with anything I need, honestly. And I wonder if I'm overreacting, but I don't think so. I just don't know how to tell her that she's toxic. She makes me feel bad. What should I do? Story time about how I found my husband's secret phone. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's sent me on Instagram. I found 5 dating apps and 2 secret girlfriends on his phone. And I can't even begin to tell you what I found on Instagram. Up until this point, my husband and I had the utmost respect and trust for each other. I never once thought he was capable of doing this. Literally every woman says that when they find out their man is cheating. Around 6 months ago, my husband started a new job. He's in tech and makes a lot of money, so I've been able to stay at home with our kids. We now have 2 kids and they're both 2 and 5. Our life is amazing. Our parents live near us. We always make time for each other and go out on dates. We even take solo trips on the weekends. Last year we went to Bali for 2 weeks. My point is we always make time for each other. When he started his new job, he started earning more money, but this also meant that he took on a lot more work. He was always so stressed out. My husband and I met in college and we studied the exact same thing. We both worked for the same company. Eventually I retired to take care of our kids. So when he got his new job, I offered to help him out with his work. He was actually really grateful for this, and we were both doing a really good job. He was working from home 3 days out of the week, so it was a great situation. We were spending time together, working together, and the kids were spending more time with their dad. His new job gave him a new cell phone, and this is the cell phone that I would usually use to help him out with his work and his laptop. Part 2 is up. Story time about how I found my husband's secret cell phone, his 2 girlfriends, and his 5 dating apps. Disclaimers is not my story time, it's me on Instagram. I started using his work cell phone to help him out with his job, and he kept his own cell phone. This is when I started noticing that he would make a big deal about losing his phone. Anytime he would misplace it, he would go absolutely berserk. Now, I thought it was just because he was stressed about work, till I realized it wasn't stress. He forgot to silence his phone one night, and the notifications were going off. I woke him up and asked him to turn it off. My mind did not go to him cheating. I thought it was work-related stuff. But then I realized it was his personal phone that was going off, not his work phone. The next day, he apologized for having his work notifications on, and I said, but it wasn't your work phone, it was your personal phone. And he said, no, it wasn't. And I said, yes, it was. And that's when he accused me of being paranoid and crazy. And that's when I knew he was cheating. I had to keep it cool though. I was feeding the kids in the kitchen when this all happened. On this day, he was gonna go to work. I knew that he was gonna take his personal and his work phone with him to the office. So what I did was change the phone covers on each phone and flip them upside down. He grabbed the work phone thinking it was his personal phone. He put it in his pocket and went to the bathroom. And he left his work phone, which was his personal phone, on the countertop. I told him that maybe I should keep it just in case I needed to answer emails, and he said yes. He left and I had his phone all to myself. As soon as I opened his personal phone, I went straight to the messages and I found his 2 girlfriends, Laura and Missy. Part 3 is story time about how I found my husband's secret phone, his 2 girlfriends, and his 5 dating apps. Disclaimers are not my story time, instead of me on Instagram. I started reading through the text messages between his 2 girlfriends. I scrolled and scrolled and scrolled. He had been together with the first girl for 2 months and the second girl just for 3 weeks. And in the messages, he was totally bad-mouthing me. He was telling them that I was crazy and abusive, and that's how he justified his cheating to them. I also read in some of the messages that he was complaining about our kids, how spoiled and ungrateful my kids were, and that's why he wanted to escape the house to be with them. Let me tell you, our kids are so considerate and so loving towards us. They're very affectionate children, and they never get upset at their dad whenever he has to go to work. So for him to be talking badly about our children just made everything 10 times worse. After reading the messages for about 2 or 3 minutes, I went to the bathroom and vomited. I was physically ill. His messages were so perverted too. I know that when you start a new relationship, you're always trying to impress people, but he just took it too far. After I vomited, I went back to his phone and kept reading the messages. This is when I found out that he was paying both of these girls rents. So the whole time I'm helping him with his job to earn money for our family, half of that was going to these women. I got sick again. After I calmed down for a few minutes, I went back to his phone. Then I found his dating apps. His dating profile was so disgusting too. He was all about fitness and mental health. He also claimed that he was single in his dating profiles. So on top of him cheating on me, he was cheating on his 2 girlfriends. This time I didn't bother reading all the messages he had in the dating apps, but I did notice that he was going on dates with multiple girls several times a week. Later on, I found out that the whole work situation was a lie. He was working from home the entire time, but going on dates. I took screenshots of everything and went straight to my lawyer. I filed for divorce that very same day. When my husband came home, I confronted him and he denied everything. Even with all the proof, he's still denying it. He's not speaking to our children, and you better believe I'm getting half of all his money. Bye. Story time about how I had my boyfriend beat up for cheating on me and all the terrible things I did to get back at him. My boyfriend and I had been together for 5 years. During that time together, I really wanted to get married, and I would bring it up all the time. After the first year, he told me that he wasn't ready to get married, and that was basically his excuse for the 5 years that we were together. Come to find out that he had cheated on me with over 20 women, even with my best friend. When he and I first started dating, he was really sweet and kind. He was also borderline obsessed with me. He would get jealous over every little thing. He would call me at random times asking me where I was, and he always knew where I was because I had my location turned on his phone. In other words, he was always trying to catch me in a lie. Fast forward to last year. I told him that if he still wasn't ready to get married, that I needed to move on and find someone else. He got really angry, pulled my hair, and threw me up against a wall. And after that, of course, I broke up with him. He begged me to get back with him for 2 months, and I finally gave in and said yes. But once again, he told me that he was still not ready to get married. This is where my best friend comes in. One day, she sends me screenshots of my boyfriend's dating profiles. I had no idea, but he was on Tinder and Bumble. That's when my best friend told me that he'd been cheating on me with so many girls. Part 2 is up. Story time about how I had my boyfriend beat up after finding out that he cheated on me with over 20 women and my best friend. After after my best friend sent me the screenshots, I called her and asked her to come over. That's when out of nowhere, she confessed to me that he had cheated on me with so many girls. I asked her how she found out all this information and she would not tell me. Then she started to cry. I got a horrible feeling that she was one of the girls. So I pressured her into telling me the truth. And that's when she confessed that she had done the dirty with my boyfriend over 5 times. And that he was the one that had been chasing her. I was incredibly heartbroken, but I needed to hear the truth. Then she told me the rest. And that the only reason that she even told me about all of this was because she was upset that he was cheating on her. Yep. Apparently, my boyfriend told her that he was going to break up with me to be with her. But she was really jealous and started doing her own digging. That's when she started looking for his dating profiles and found them. She then contacted a bunch of girls on Instagram that followed him, and it turns out that they had all done it with him. And that he had promised all of them to break up with me to be with them. In total, he had cheated on me with about 22 girls. And those were the ones that we knew of. I kicked my ex-best friend out of my house and I haven't spoken to her since. But I'm grateful that she was honest with me. I confronted my boyfriend and he went crazy again. That's when he told me that my best friend was making everything up because she was in love with him. Once again, he pinned me up against the wall and threatened if I left him. And he tried to kiss me. Part 3 is up. Story time about how I had my boyfriend beat up for cheating on me with 20 girls and my best friend, and abusing me. As he had me pinned up against the wall, I managed to kick him and he let me go. I ran for my life. I went straight to my parents' house and told them everything. By the way, my dad is an ex-cop, so I knew my boyfriend was not going to chase me to my parents' house. My dad called his connections and got them to find my boyfriend. My dad was trying to convince me to press charges against him, but I just couldn't do it. So they had to let him go. After a few days, I noticed my now ex is starting to follow me around. I noticed his car following me at night, and anytime I parked in a public space, he would try to park right near me. One night as I was leaving my job, I was getting into my car and he came running at me. That's when he grabbed my face and told me that he still wanted to be with me and that I couldn't be with anybody else. He was acting crazy. Then he tried to force me to get into his car, but I fought him off. I told him that he would regret it if he didn't leave me alone, and he finally left. Right then and there, I called a few friends and told them that I needed help. And they knew what I meant by that. They ended up beating him up and he was left with a broken ankle. And he never tried looking for me again. Now when he sees me around town, he literally runs away. I even started a Facebook group with all the girls that he cheated on. And we're basically spreading the word about what this guy is really like. If you have anyone in your life that is like this, or anyone that tries to force you to do anything or mistreats you, please speak out. I'm so much happier.